Okay, welcome back to another session of Biblical Theology, Exegesis and Hermeneutics, where meaning is always context-driven. As you know, we've been going through the book of Hebrews, and finally we've come here to chapter 2, verses 10 through 18. And I guess what we'll do here is we'll read through the text and then we'll look at some structure. For it was fitting for him, on account of whom are all things, and through whom are all things, in bringing many sons to glory, to make perfect the captain of their salvation through sufferings. For both the one who sanctifies and those who are being sanctified are all of one, for which cause he is not ashamed to call them brethren, saying, I will announce your name to my brothers. In the midst of the congregation I shall sing you a hymn. And again, I shall put my trust in him. And again, I and the children whom God has given to me. Therefore, since the children share in blood and flesh, he himself likewise partook of the same, in order that through death he might make of no effect the one who has the power of death, that is, the devil. And he shall, and he might set free those who have been subject to slavery, always living by the fear of death. For certainly he did not take hold of angels, but the seed of Abraham he took hold of. From whence, therefore, he is obligated to become like in accordance of all things to his brethren, in order that he may become a merciful and faithful high priest to the things of God, in order to make propitiation for the sins of the people, for in which things he has suffered, being tempted, he is able to help those who are being tempted. Okay, so that brings us up to the conclusion of the author's discussion on the Incarnation, and then as the text goes on in chapter 3 following, it's going to be about Jesus, our high priest. And so he touched upon this right here at his conclusion to the Incarnation. But now, to understand where we're at in the process of chapter 2, we're still in this midrashic exegesis of Psalm 8 and three other scriptures that he midrashically interprets Christologically. And so this whole theme here is centering on the incarnation of Christ. And I have here highlighted here verse 9, because when we come here to verse 8, let me see here. We got to get this thing right. Okay. All right. So when we come here to verse 10, we're going to have the word for it is fitting. So this is a basis clause. So it's going to refer us back here to verse 9. And as we looked at last week, we looked at verses 5 to 9. And and what was displayed there predominantly was Psalm 8, and verse 9 became the Christological interpretation for Psalm 8. And let's just read this again so we can kind of understand the gar, the word for, the basis clause here, for his continued discussion on the Incarnation, and it's going to drive us back here to verse 9. And so this picks up. But we see Jesus, having been made a little lower than the angels, on account of the suffering of death, having been crowned with glory and honor, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. So here, as we know that when we look at this particular psalm, the interpretation of this psalm, remember back in 1:4, we had the statement that Jesus had become so much greater than the angels. Well, this explains why the Creator became so much greater than the angels, is because he was made a little lower than the angels in the Incarnation. And so Christologically, we saw that Psalm 8 was never fulfilled by man because of the fall. And so what the author of Hebrews is doing is that he's interpreting Psalm 8 Christologically because Adam fell. Well, the second Adam, Christ, didn't fall, and so that now he can truly rule over the whole earth, over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky and the animals, and rule over the whole earth, because as we saw in verse 8, that we saw that man had not accomplished that, and that now all things have not been put underneath his feet. But we see that. But what we do see though, vis-a-vis Psalm 110, that all things were going to be submitted underneath the feet of the Messiah in Psalm 110, and then we're told that this is Christ. And so Psalm 110 and Psalm 8 are connected vis-a-vis putting the enemies underneath their feet. So that's how Psalm 8 is going to be tied into Psalm 10, is the subjection of the enemies underneath the feet of the Messiah, being accomplished by by Yahweh on behalf of the Messiah. And so what we want to see here is that the interpretive element here is this phrase right here, diata pathema, tu thanatou. So this is not a part. This is here. This little prepositional phrase was inserted here. That it says that he was made a little lower than the angels, and he was crowned with glory and honor, speaking about mankind. And then this is the interpretive element here, where the author of Hebrews inserts here in between the distich to give the reason for the crowning and glory of the Son of Man. And it's because of the suffering of death. So we see Jesus having been crowned with glory and honor on account of the suffering of death. So that, then we have a purpose clause, so that he might taste death by the grace of God for everyone. So this is the hinge the interpretive hinge and the Midrash for the interpretation of Psalm 8. And we're still here, when we come here to verse 10, when we have Eprepengar auto, for it was fitting for him. So we have a basis clause here. So this is going to immediately begin a new unit. So it's a basis clause. And the him here, the auto, we would understand here from verse 9, by the grace of God, that this is going to refer to God the Father. So this, back here in verse 10, it was fitting for him, that is God. And so what was fitting for him? So let's just go through here and look at structure. So when we come here to verse 11, so we have both the one who sanctifies and those being sanctified. Okay, so verse 10 is talking about what God has done in Christ for on our behalf in the Incarnation. And then verse 11 is what Christ has done for us by means of the Incarnation. So verse 10 and 11 are separated by subject. The subject of verse 10 is God, and in 11 is Jesus. So there's that naturally divides 10 and 11 into two parts. And then 11 flows into a scriptural midrash that would assert why there is, because Jesus is the one who sanctifies, and those who are being sanctified are all of one. So there's a unity. The unity is brought about by means of holiness, and then the unity here is that he says that he is not ashamed to call them brethren. So there's a unity of brotherhood by means of sanctification. And then verses 12 and 13 are just the outflow of confirmatory scriptures that would further substantiate the claim here made for this cause. He is not ashamed to call them brethren, saints. So it's confirmatory scriptures, collateral. It's collateral reading, and here we have legon, kai pollen, and these are all similar scriptures to make a similar point. Remember how we talked about back on 1:6 how this construction was not proper, kai pollen, this construction was not proper back in 1:6 because it was an adversative contrasting statement. You can go refer back to that, but these are all collateral scriptures of agreement underlying a theme of a familial relationship that we have in Christ. And here it's brethren. Here the theme here is trust, and it's sandwiched in between here and paideia, which is children. Okay, so this is we're using familial language here. Okay, so this is what this is all about here. And you can see here that when we come to verse 14, the theme of children, therefore, since this is going to be an inference statement, okay, and it's therefore, and it's going to give concluding grounds. for what was said, but it's still tied in with Paideia, so it's just coming to a conclusion of the Incarnation. So what we would say here is that 11 through 13 is going to be a unit, okay? And 10 stands by itself. It's what God did in Christ for us by means of the Incarnation. 11 is what Christ did for us in the Incarnation. It's the something to do with the unity of brotherhood by means of sanctification and supporting scriptures. Then when we come to 14, we're going to come to a summary statement, and we can see then here we have a subordinate clause here. Therefore, since the children partake of blood and flesh, he himself likewise partook of the same. So here's this state a collateral or correlative statement here in these two clauses that is going to confirm the Incarnation by means of our familial relationship, and how it's necessary for Christ to share in blood and flesh. And then there's a purpose statement, and he gives two of them. That one, that he might make of no effect the one who had the power of death, that is the devil, and that he may here, I guess we can say, liberate, that he might liberate these or those. And then here is another subordinate sentence here. As many as were subject to death were always living by the fear of death. So there's two purpose clauses, one concerning the nullification of Satan's power over death, and then the other to set us at liberty, to set us free from the power of slavery to the fear of death. And then 16 is going to be its own statement, and it's somewhat of a parenthetical inclusio, goes back to the topic of angels, and shows why Christ is superior, because he didn't come to help the fallen angels, he came to help the seed of Abraham. So it's kind of, he mentions the angels again to kind of bring the whole topic of Christ's superiority over the angels to a close. And then we have here a final inferential statement from whence then he was obligated to be like in all ways to the brethren. And then here is a purpose clause, that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest to the things of God. Now here's another final purpose clause, in order to make propitiation for the sins of the people. And then an explanatory verse, gar, for in which he himself suffered, having been tempted, he is able to help those being tempted. So that this kind of breaks down the structure, and let me show you on this next slide what I did here. I made a structural analysis of the whole passage here. So we have here 10 to 18, and then point A is the basis of what God did in Christ through the Incarnation, and then all what's appropriate. B, the basis of what Jesus did for us through the Incarnation, the brotherhood of believers, 11 to 13, and then C, concluding remarks concerning the scriptural basis for the Incarnation. And then we have, and this is broken down here into 5 separate units: inferential scriptural basis of the Incarnation, salvific purposes and the means of the Incarnation. Then that we had this parenthetical inclusio remark on the angels, and then we had a final basis clause for the obligation of the Incarnation reiterated. You'll see there's a lot of reiterations for the Incarnation here. He's constantly seeing a new reason for the Incarnation, a deeper reason, and it's kind of like he's peeling an onion as he's going, and it's getting deeper and deeper, and there's all these different basis clauses for the reason for the Incarnation, and he's done a masterful job. And then he has these purpose clauses here, lastly, about the priestly purpose of the Incarnation. So that pretty much makes the structure here for verses 10 to 8. And if you do, this takes a lot. Let me tell you, this takes a lot of time to be able to come up with a structural analysis. You just don't simply just pull this out of a hat in one night. This is something that comes about through meditation. And you got to have the scripture going over and over and over and over and over again in your mind, and then you'll slowly begin to be able to pick apart the different units and the different thoughts and the difference, the subjects, how the subjects change, and then the basis clauses and the inference clauses and purpose and whatever. So it just goes on, and it ends up all breaking down. And this is what I have come up with, and it's certainly not half-baked. And I'm not saying this is a perfect structural analysis by any means, but this is just, as I would say, my most responsible reading of the text at the current time. So that's all we can ever say this side of glory. Okay. So moving along here, we're going to look here just at verse 10, and we are going to look at its constituent parts. So let's look here. For it was fitting to him. So when we look up here, we have the motive clause, gar. So this is gar. And that's going to take us back to verse 9. And that since this is dealing with the suffering of the Messiah here, of Christ, that's going to go back to verse 9, where it said, by the grace of God, he tasted death for everyone, by means of the suffering, on account of the suffering of death, right? He was crowned. So this is explanatory. So this is a further explanatory midrashic exegesis of what he said in verse 9. So he's giving further implications and reiterations and retellings of what's going on. So it's important, though, here to look at my title, Conclusionary Midrashic Bases of the Incarnation. So this proves itself as we've gone through the passage already. Because he keeps coming down with further basis clauses based upon the scripture, the scriptural interpretation of the text. So this is really midrashic. And why are we saying midrashic? Because this is called a Christological interpretation of the Old Testament text. Because if you'll remember here, when he in verses, especially like in verse 13, where it says, "I and the children whom God has given to me." When you look at Isaiah chapter 8, that's talking about the prophet Isaiah and his children. But when we look here at verse 13, it's Christ has usurped the role of Isaiah, and now whatever Isaiah said, it's Christ now saying it, "I and the children." So Christ is now appropriating the speech of Isaiah for himself. Now, of course, we can allow for this since, Christ is the one who inspired Isaiah, and since Isaiah saw Christ's glory, Christ is God, so all the Scripture speaks about Christ. But it's not exegesis; it's a midrash. So that's why I'm using this particular word, midrash, and. Okay, so midrash here is just it's a Hebrew term stemming from darash. Okay, and darash means to seek, or to search. So this is a research. This is research work. A midrash is a research work. It's researching, and at least it's the way the recherche, which the French would interpret this. But it offers a Christological interpretation, and so I just need to explain some of my words here, and the reason for them, and they are well founded. And you will see this borne out in probably some of the commentaries. But we'll look here at this, for it was fitting for him. So let's look at the actual core, the baseline for this particular text. And then that's going to come down here like this. For it was fitting for him to make perfect the archegon here, and we're going to translate this. It's a good translation is founder, or we already said captain. All right, we said captain. Okay. And pioneer, right? A pioneer of our salvation. That's an important, but founder is really good. Captain, pioneer, and I'm going to say here, I'm going to go out on a limb, and he's our champion. Okay, and that's really when you get down to a Hellenistic reading of verse 14. Christ's victory, Christus victor over the devil. So that's going to be important. But the translation founder, captain, pioneer, these are all core to the meaning of archegos here, or in the accusative archegon here. So let's go back to the sentence base, the baseline. For it was fitting for him to make perfect the founder of their salvation through suffering. So everything else is going to be modifiers here. All the other parts of the sentence here are going to be modifiers and subservient to eprepin and teleosai. So we'll go on through this, but I just wanted to explain here. We had our motive clause here with Gar, and so we need to see that that's taking us back to look at what's going on in verse 19. For it was fitting for him to make perfect the founder of their salvation by means of sufferings. So that goes back to he tasted death for everyone. The purpose statement, hapos, verse 9, that he might taste death for everyone. So this is a further explanatory basis clause for verse 9, looking at a deeper purpose for the incarnation, and it says here it was fitting for him. So fitting here, prepo, is going to be something that's suitable, that's fitting, that's appropriate, and it is imperfect, and so it was well thought out, and it was very appropriate for him, that is, for God. And then we have, this is very interesting here, we have what we would call this is a prepositional relative verbless clause that's bifurcated, dihon and dihu, that functions as a circumlocution for God. That's a mouthful there. It's a preposition. It's dia, so it's built on two dias, and it's a relative, han. So it's a prepositional relative verbless clause, because you have to supply estin here for all things, for whom are all things, and through whom are all things, and that functions as a circumlocution for God. So, but this needs to be, we need to take this apart. And it's very important to see that it was fitting for God to make perfect the erkagon, okay, the founder of our or their salvation by means of suffering. It was fitting. Why is it fitting? So that this here is descriptive. It's a modifier for auto, okay. For whom, on account of whom are all things, and through whom are all things. Okay, so since God is the creator of all things, this is modifying the reason why it's fitting for God. It's fitting because he is God here, and he's the one who has created everything. So when we go back to verse 8 here of this chapter 2:8, we're looking at this psalm, and we're going, wait a second, the man was created to rule over everything, but we don't see man ruling over everything. And why is that? Well, it's because verse 14 lets us in down here that the devil came and took the power of death. He tempted Adam and Eve in the garden, and they fell. So in order to get things back to the original idea in Genesis 1 is that all things were good. They were very good. Okay? We haven't been able to get back there. Christ is our ticket to get us back to Genesis 1, before the fall in the garden. Okay? Before chapter 3. So we're going to be able, Christ is our founder, our captain, our pioneer, to bring us back to the garden. Okay? And that's going to be our millennial reign, and then obviously into the future. But this is our salvation. The salvation here is yet future. Okay? And we can see this from the following clause. In bringing many sons to glory. Well, that's still yet. See, that's this is descriptive of that it's fitting for him. It's fitting that what? That he's bringing, it modifies the prep in here, in bringing many sons to glory. So this is a further coloration here. But I may be getting ahead of myself here. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just a little a slide here showing diagramming, and this here shows our baseline here, a prep in here, and we have our modifier here, auto, and we have here the subject of a prepin, which is the unexpressed. Hopefully we should have had an auton in here, or a theon, or a theon in here, something in the accusative case, but we didn't. But we had an auto. So usually what happens is sometimes these at prepin, it is fitting. It's called an impersonal use of the verb. Because it's not he or she, it's it. It was fitting for him. Okay, and this is the dative. So we're putting the dative here, but it's really the subject of teleosai here. So to make perfect the captain of their salvation through suffering. And bringing many sons to glory. So here, in bringing many sons to glory is a modifier of teleosai here. I think I probably misspelled that, teleosai. I should put a little sigma in there. Cool. All right. But this is basically showing us the parts of speech here, and how we have a baseline and modifiers and prepositional. Remember, this here was this. What was this? Is the prepositional relative verbless clause that functions as a circumlocution for God. Okay, for theos. But would be theon, okay, in the accusative here. Okay, so this here is just a chart here, just kind of showing grammar and syntax, and the baseline and its modifiers. Okay, let's move on here. Hughes, and he made a great statement here. This is awesome. He says this: the conjunction gar indicates that our author is now explaining more fully what he has just said concerning the purpose of the incarnation of the Son, namely that by the grace of God he may taste the death for everyone. To the unregenerate mind, for the divine Redeemer to be humbled by incarnation, and much more so by the shame of dying on a cross, seemed totally inappropriate. A crucified Messiah was a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. So says 1 Corinthians 1:23. The purpose of this and the following verses, so this is a really good conclusion he has. The purpose of this and the following verses is to show how fitting this method of salvation is, and by implication how totally inappropriate any other notion must be. Wow, he gets an A+ for that. Just what an excellent thought. So I needed to turn you on to Philip Hughes, and if you can get his commentary. It's a little old, but it's believe me, this is all good stuff, man. He does a great job here. Moving on here to our buddy who's no longer with us, but William Lane, and he wants to give his 2 cents for Ephremite War. He says it reflects an educational and religious background where questions of theodicy, okay, the justification of God in view of evil, called for the response of it is fitting for God, or it is appropriate for God. Here, it affirms that what has taken place in the experience of Jesus was consistent with God's known character and purpose, or purposes. The divine intention to lead human beings to the goal for which they had been created appeared to be mocked by human experience. That goes back to verse 8 of the same chapter here, 2:8. That we don't see all things put underneath his feet, meaning mankind. Okay, so we would look at the world and we could say that the goal for which they had been created it's being mocked by human experience. Okay, it was entirely congruous with the primal intention celebrated in Psalm 8. That God should graciously decree that his Son identify himself with the human condition and rescue humanity through his own humiliation and death. There's a lot of meat in there. So he's definitely pulling on Psalm 8 as being all connected here with it is appropriate for him, or it is suitable to him, or it is fitting to him. Okay, this is how we would interpret prepo here, prepin, in the imperfect. And so I wanted to share this with you. There's some jewels in these commentaries, and I want to highlight those, and I want to bring those to your attention as I see fit. And we'll continue the parade here with David De Silva. And this here we're looking at the participial clause here, polus huios eis doxon agagonta. So this is in bringing many sons to glory. That's what this is, and this here was modifying teleosai. Here the infinitive teleosai, in bringing many sons to glory. So here he says, the hearers are led to think of themselves in terms of this new identity given to them through their attachment to the group. And again, to see the whole of their lives primarily as a process aimed at entering glory, inheriting salvation, as in verse 114. Remember, that's where the angels. What was the purpose of the angels? They were sent as ministering servants on behalf of us who are in the process of inheriting salvation, which will be attained only at our beginning, at our death, or at the second coming. As noted above, the expression grows out of the author's double reading of Psalm 8, recalling that that psalm and its exposition through the repetition of the term glory, right? So he was made a little lower than the angels, but being crowned with glory and honor, right? So he's saying here that the term here used in this participial clause here, in bringing many sons to glory, this is an interpretive word that's going to go back to back to 2:7, 9, and 10, interpreting Psalm 8, and now confirms this double reading. So here, De Silva is showing us that this is definitely a midrashic Christological interpretation. Okay, as the founder of their salvation, Jesus fulfills the psalm first and is in the process of bringing the psalm to its complete fulfillment for all the human children. Very, very, very thoughtful. It's a process. And he said children here, human children, picking up on the theme here in verses 11 to 13 of the familial, of the brethren and children. So he's masterful here in thinking of everything here. And I just wanted to share this with you. And so some of you may want to pick up his commentary. He's done a fabulous job here. Now coming here to Thompson, so we're going to look here at archegos, and so basically you got to remember that what we're looking at here, we got arche, all right, and then we got the word ago, okay. So this is arche. You can just remember this. You can go back to Genesis 1 in the Septuagint, and it's going to say anarche, in the beginning. So arche means beginning, origins, and if you're thinking in terms of people, it's a leader, a ruler, a prince. Like archangels are, they're the head angels, okay? And then archegos then is here, this ending here is from ago, and this is to bring. So it's somebody who is an originator who brings something. So pioneer, founder, author, champion, and captain. These are all, the old King James puts captain here for a translation of archegos, and which is very good. So all of these words here, we need to keep them here with archegos. There's a lot of them, and you want to shift between arche. Where's the emphasis here? Is it on arche or is it on ago? All right. So it's so the best blend of the two seems to be pioneer, but I really do think I like them. It's growing on me looking at the term champion here, especially in light of Greco-Roman ideals when we look at verse 14. But let's see what Thompson says here. The significance of the word archegos in Hebrews becomes evident in the author's usage. In 12:2, its combination with perfecter suggests that the term means originator. So he's the originator and perfecter, or the old King James, the author and finisher of our faith. All right. So originator, somebody who is an originator of something. He's the first to go. He's the first to do this. He's the first to do that, and then he leads people in his path. So here, this is this is all part of what it means to be an archegos. Similarly, the term forerunner in 620, prodromos here, and the phrase source of salvation in 5:9 are synonyms with archegos. Christ is thus one who opens the way for others to follow. That's good. He opens the way for others to follow. The language allows the author to exploit both the solidarity of the Son with his people and the Son as the one who opens the way. Very good. The cosmic drama of pre-existent descent, exaltation, and the new name resembles the plot of the hymn in Philippians 2, 6-11, but has additional dimension of solidarity of the Son with the sons, okay? The huios, okay? The Son is the pioneer who brings many sons to glory. There you go. By sharing, and also that agaganta is also from the word is from ago. It's just a an aorist participle of ago. The Son is the pioneer who brings many sons to glory by sharing in the suffering of death. His solidarity with the Son is evident in the fact that he is one origin with them and calls them brothers. So I wanted to bring you to at least his interpretation of this. And now he may be a little bit on the liberal side, but I learned a lot of things from people like this gentleman. Likewise, here he says this about Hercules as the pioneer. Hercules, Latin, was the most prominent and widely worshipped hero in Greek and Roman myth. Stories of Hercules involve his 12 labors, in which he battled monstrous animals and other terrifying beasts at Hera's command. The major theme is Hercules' victory over Hades in battle. And this is actually the 12th labor that he did. Hellenistic philosophers allegorized the stories of Hercules, interpreting his battles with wild beasts as they struggled with vices. He overcame death through virtue, and he became a savior insofar as he showed others how they could overcome the tyrants that undermined moral improvement. He was a model for others, demonstrating how they could find the path to moral improvement in their own struggles. He was called an archegos because he led the way for others to follow. So Hercules, here he's taking hold of Cerberus, all right, the hound of hell, that this thing that had like 3 heads or something that was at the gates of hell, so that nobody got out. And Hercules was able to go down, according to myth, and get somebody out or something like that for a short time. But no means all humanity like Christ did. But it shows here that he's an archegos. He's the first to go. Okay, and so we have some of these stories in Greek mythology. But if you were, remember, when the author here is using the Old Testament text, he's always quoting the Septuagint. Okay, that means he's not reading a Hebrew forelog. He's not reading a Hebrew text, and neither are his readers here. The people who he wrote to, they're reading Greek, and these people are obviously highly educated people within a Greco-Roman culture. And it would be impossible for them not to know the popular Greco-Roman religious ideals of the first century, and they would obviously know about Hercules and his supposed exploits, and that he would be thought of as an archegos. So we're looking at this as that he says that Hercules is like a pioneer, or a champion. Okay, and that's you have to be able to. You got to remember these people are cultured readers and people of the first century, and for them not to know the religious beliefs of the people in which they were situated would be foolish, and so they were this would make sense to them, so they would be able to see that there could be a little colorization here of using the Christ as a obviously as superior to Hercules. I'm not saying that he would be he would be subservient to Hercules in any manner, but we would read this vis-a-vis the Greco-Roman culture. That's all what we're saying. Okay, to move on here, and we're going to focus here on the verb teleao, to make perfect, to complete, to mature, to finish, or to bring to maturity. This verse also introduces a major theme in Hebrews: perfection, teleao, and cognates. Often has cultic connotations, such as consecration for priestly service. And she refers us here to Exodus 29 and 33. In Hebrews, this cultic sense is developed in terms of a vocational idea of completely or perfectly fulfilling God's intended purpose. Thus, perfection in this verse does not suggest imperfection, but rather the perfect completion of God's plan to redeem his people through the suffering of his Son. So this phrase, when we read it, that it was fitting for God to make perfect the champion of their salvation through sufferings, to the English reader, it could be implied that Jesus was imperfect, and that somehow he needed to become perfect. But that is not the idea in Greek. The verb means to bring to completion, to bring to maturity, to bring to perfection, to bring to a finish. So it's a process. But the teleao side, we're going to see another verb here, teleo, and it's in the orbit of all of these of this whole word group. Okay, but teleao it looks more on the perfection side, the ultimate, the end of the process, rather than the process itself. See, teleo would look at the process, and teleao is looking at the end of the process. So something that reaches maturity, completeness, perfection. Are you following me? So this is how we are to understand teleao vis-a-vis teleo. So we'll go on from here. We'll see. Okay, so he's looking at this as qualified. God has qualified Jesus, the Son, to come before him in priestly action. He has done so by the suffering in which Jesus confirmed his obedience as the one qualified, or the one qualified. So he's going to look at this having been qualified or having been made perfect for priestly ministry before God, as the one eternally qualified, right here, having become perfected forever. So he's going to interpret this one eternally qualified. He is the absolute high priest, By his high priestly work, his offering before God, Christ has once for all qualified those for whom he acts to come directly before God in the heavenly sanctuary as men whose sin is expiated. This goes far beyond what took place in the Old Testament cultus, which allowed for a direct approach to God in the inner temple only for the priests and not for all the people. The verbs teleo and teleao coincide in the New Testament, especially in the sense to carry through, to complete. Whereas this is the chief meaning of teleo, the thought of totality is stronger in the case of teleao. Okay, the findings suggest for teleo the meanings of telos, goal, issue, end, and for teleao those of teleos, whole, complete, and perfect. So anyhow, this particular he's actually he's a Nazi theologian under Hitler. Wow. That must have been a sad situation. So this guy here, I don't know, some bad stuff going on there, but he had some good things to say, even for a Nazi theologian under Hitler. Wow. Looking here at the Greco-Roman world, Epictetus here, he is going to use here. We're going to see how he uses teleutai here, and it says here, then the fruit on the one hand of the fig is not also brought to maturity in an hour. Okay, so this is what he says here. So there's a process. First let it blossom, and then it throw forth fruit, and then let it ripen, and then the fruit on the one hand of the fig is not brought to maturity in an hour. And then he says something like, you desire in this manner so easily and easily to obtain the opinion of the fruit of the opinion of a man so easily. And then he says, I would not even tell you, and don't expect it. So he's using teleao here in the process as the process that, hey, a fig does not ripen in one day. There's a process to it, and the fruit, its perfected fruit, is not made in one day. So we can see here that when we take this, that Christ, it was fitting for God to make perfect the author of our salvation, to make him perfect through sufferings. It's to bring him to maturity by means of sufferings. So what do we mean by that? Well, the author of Hebrews, it says that he learned obedience through the things that he suffered. Another important point here is there's some scriptures here that are important, and one is going to be, we got to read it. I gotta look this up. Give me a second here. It's Luke. It's like 2:53 or something like that. So if you got a Bible, go to Luke 2:53, and we're going to see something here. So the very end of Luke, chapter 2. Okay, we'll do that. All right. So it says here that Jesus advanced in wisdom and stature and in grace with both God and man. So Jesus was growing, okay, in wisdom, in stature, and in grace with God and man. So there's a process to it's kind of like this. I'll just say it in a funny way. A junior high Jesus isn't what God intended to save you. Okay, even though Jesus, being a junior higher, was God and he was perfect, he hadn't lived life. He has to become a mature adult where he lives through life. He's been around the block. Okay. All right. He's not half baked. He's not wet under the ears. Okay. He's been tested. So we want to look at this as that a junior high Jesus, that's not what God intended to save us. He wanted Jesus to live a full mature life of an adult, so that he can become a faithful high priest who can help us in our, when it says it ends here that what was verse 18 here, that he by means of suffering, being tempted, he's also able to help those who are being tempted. So that, that's the reason for the suffering, is that so that he can help us and identify with us. So it wasn't a junior high Jesus who saved us. It was an adult priest on the cross that died for our sins, and has offered his body as a sacrifice once for all for all of us. Now, in this particular slide here, if you look here at John 19, when Jesus on the cross said, "It is finished," okay, that is the word. He's using the verb teleo, tetelestai. Okay, it is finished. All right, that's what he said. So, what's finished? Everything. Okay, the process of him going through trials and temptations of obedience unto death, and then the sacrifice. So everything is there. Everything is summed up in tetelestai. When he says this on the cross, it is finished. It has come to an end. Okay, and literally, you have the process. Everything has come to an end, and then he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. So that's what John tells us here. And it uses the word teleo, which is, it's all part of the word group of teleao that we have here. And this is used numerous times here. And there's a special sense in which teleao is used here in the Septuagint, and there's a phrase here, and you will feel the hand of Aaron and the hand of his sons. Now, you will never see that in an English translation. So you will see, and you shall consecrate Aaron and his sons. That's what it says in English. Okay, or you will ordain Aaron and his sons, but it's, and you shall fill the hand of Aaron and the hand of his sons. So when the Septuagint, that's the Greek translation, came here and translated umileti or umileta yad Aharon v'yad banav, okay, in talking to Moses, and you will fill the hand of Aaron and the hand of his sons. This is a technical phrase, and the Septuagint translates it, and you shall teleoses, you shall make perfect or bring to completion. You shall bring to maturity the hands of Aaron and the hands of his son. Okay, so this is just an expression of that you shall ordain them or consecrate them. That's the idea that we have to, when we read this, we have to, in English, to make sense of this, and in an English translation, you can't take this phrase, either the Septuagint or the Hebrew, but the Septuagint did take it very literally into their language. You will fill the hand of Aaron and his sons, and this is by means of the sacrifice of the bullock and the two rams, the ram of burnt offering, and the second ram, the ram of ordination. And this ram of ordination, they would lay their hands on it and confess their sins and the sins of the country over it. And then the blood from the ram of consecration, they would take the blood and put it upon the right earlobe and the right thumb and the right toe of Aaron and his sons. And this was done for a process of like 8 days. And then Moses was to wave them as a wave offering with the sacrifices, so that now Aaron, his hands are filled. Okay, so what does this mean, your hands are filled? It means here, the bottom here, to fill one's hands to the Lord means to provide oneself with something which one brings to the Lord. So remember that the Israelites were told that you don't come empty-handed. No one comes empty-handed to the feast. Okay, so you're bringing something. Okay, and to fill one's hands means to provide oneself with something which one brings to the Lord. So Aaron, in the process of his ordination or his consecration, was repeatedly he was given sacrificial victims of a bullock, 2 rams, and they were slain, and that he offered them up in sacrifice on the altar. And Moses did this, and then anointed him with oil, and then the whole dress, the headdress and the mitre and the ephod and the robe and all that, all the stuff was put on him. And now, so his hands are filled. Well, that just means that he has the equipment by which to now do the job of a priest. So now when we take the same language of teleao and come back to Christ, all right, well, what does it mean that God made Christ perfect by means of suffering? Well, Christ, remember, is 2 things. His body is a sacrifice. Okay, so he's both the sacrifice and the high priest. So God made Christ perfect through sufferings. That's relating to his sacrificial. That he went through every human testing and temptation that you and I can go through. He learned obedience through by being tested, by being That's how he learned obedience, by being tempted. That's what the author says here in the book of Hebrews. And so it wasn't a junior high Jesus. There was a process. He had to live through an adult life and experience everything so that he could be a faithful and merciful high priest for us. So he had to reach maturity, and in terms of all of the different things that we go through as human beings. Jesus was met by our human weaknesses that we have in situations. So he lived through that, and he did so without sin. So now he is an appropriate sacrifice now to that his blood can bring about our salvation, and that so he's both the sacrifice and the priest, the high priest. So this is unique. So Jesus is this archegos, and it would be wrong I'm not going to read this whole slide here, but there's a lot of info here on this phrase Milei Yad HaKohen, filling the hand of the priest here, and you can read through this on your leisure. Okay, so coming here to verse 11, so we're going to switch gears. Verse 10 was all about what God was doing in Christ for us vis-a-vis the Incarnation. Now, when we come here to verse 11, gears are switching, and it's no longer God, but we have Jesus or Christ, okay? So let's look at this. For both the one who sanctifies and those being sanctified are all of one, okay? On account of which he is not ashamed to call them brethren, okay? Saying, all right? And then he gives he gives these three different quotations, this Midrashic quotation from Psalm 22, and then we got Isaiah 8:17, and we got 8:18 here. These latter two come from Isaiah, and so what's happening here? Let's look at this. It says the basis of what Jesus did for us through the Incarnation, i.e., the brotherhood of believers. Okay, so unity with Christ through sanctification. That's what we're looking at here. For both the one who sanctifies and those being sanctified are all of one. Okay, now it didn't say of one what. Okay, people are going to say of one Father. Okay, that's what they're going to put, or one family. Okay, here a good if you want to put Father here obviously is appropriate. Stock is good, all of one stock. Okay, it's our DNA. All right, we're all of one. What DNA now? Divine nature appropriated, divine nature applied. Okay, DNA. This is our new. We're all of one now. Why? Because we're sanctified. We're one with the one who sanctifies. We are being sanctified. We're all of one. Now, it's because of that causal reason is that he's not ashamed to call them brethren. Okay, so there is a brotherhood of believers. Okay, the unity is brought about by means of sanctification. So Christ perfect. So God making the champion of their salvation perfect by means of sufferings. Okay, so now that offering, Jesus now is the one who sanctifies, and we are those who are being sanctified, who obviously, you have to understand here the thought that we have to accept the sacrifice of Christ. Okay. Now it's important here that we have here this word shame. Okay. What's going on here in the book of Hebrews is that these particular group of Jewish Christians are being ashamed to be associated with Jesus. So part of this letter is to tell them, hey, you cannot be ashamed of Christ. Okay, we have to put that away. We have to pay close attention to that which was spoken. Okay, and so this honor and shame society that they're a part of here, to remember their family members are shaming them because they're Christians. Well, now the author is going to say, hey, well, Christ is not ashamed to call you brethren. So now there's this familial relationship that we're brought into. And now we're in a family relationship. And now this is this part here, we're talking about Christians here. So this whole thing here, verse 11, it's not talking about humanity in general. It's only about those who accept, according to this book, the Jewish people who are accepting Christ's sacrifice. Because of that, they are one with the one who sacrificed himself on their behalf. So the one who sanctifies, for both the one who sanctifies and those being sanctified, are all of one essence, one DNA of one, or of they're all one with God in the Father. Okay, or one stock, one family. And I like family too. One family. It works good in contextually here. And then there's this causal reason here. Christ's shameless brotherhood of believer is the causal reason. It's his, he has no shame. He's creating a brotherhood of believers by means of sanctification. And our unity in the brotherhood, it comes by means of sanctification. So that's what's being said here. Then he gives these collateral readings here. I will announce your name to my brethren in the midst of the ecclesia, or in the midst of the congregation. I will sing a hymn to you. So here, this comes from Psalm 22, and probably to American Christians, you're not going to get the point, but you got to remember that if you go to Psalm 22, when you open up the reading of the text, it starts off with what Eli Eli azavtani, lama azavtani, right? My God, why have you forsaken me? That's the Hebrew reading. The Aramaic is lama, or lama sabachthani, all right? Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. So that's just the Aramaic reading of it. But it means the same thing as azav, in to forsake. So here, it's impossible, okay? It's impossible to read 12, this quotation, because you got to find it. But you can't get to verse 12 before you go through verse 1, okay? And so you'll see then that this was strategic, and that these were words uttered by Jesus from the cross. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? So this Psalm 22 is really a prophetic psalm of David that was bigger than life for him. I mean, he was writing this psalm, on behalf of, his own trials that he went through. But as he was writing this, it was beyond himself. It was greater than himself, and it became this prophetic messianic psalm. And to see this, to Allen, to his commentary, and he'll see he's going to list here how this particular psalm, how different ways that the New Testament picks up on this. So first of all, my God, why have you forsaken me? Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads, saying, he trusted in God, let now God rescue him if he wants him. So these were all sayings that Jesus spoke from the cross, but these are all part of the text here in Psalm 22. I am thirsty, so he thirsted, so he was given, some vinegar to drink. They divided my garments, right? This is also a part of this. Now, he didn't list this, but Psalm 22:16, they pierced my hands and feet. And I know that you can read that as Ka'ari, as a lion, but we're just going to take that from the root word kara here, okay, which means to pierce, to bore through. So pierce makes good, and that's what the Septuagint does. So we're just following the Septuagint reading here. So they pierced my hands and feet. They divided my garments, and he was heard. He was heard before by God, and I will declare your name to my brethren. So that picks up here in Hebrews 2:12, where we're at right now. So there's all these different to get here to Psalm 22:2, to the Thanksgiving part of this psalm. You got to go through all the lament, okay? So you got to go through all of this lament here, okay, before you come here to this Thanksgiving part here, that he was heard, and I will declare your name to my brethren. So it's impossible to this not to go through your mind. It's impossible. When you're hearing, I will declare your name to my brethren, you're not just hearing that. Okay, you're hearing everything else, and I will explain this through Bakhtin. He's got some real excellent insights into literary theory here, and it's real important that you're aware of this. But that I will declare your name to my brethren. So here Christ is appropriating the words of David, like he did on the cross. My God. So I will declare your name to my brethren. So remember that the reason these scriptural bases here are picking up on the familial aspect of our relationship now with Christ. We're brothers. Okay. Now the next verse here comes from Isaiah 8:17, and again, I will put my trust in him. Okay, here, that's the second one. This, in order to understand this verse, you have to understand Isaiah 7 and 8, okay, and the whole context there. Because remember, we're not just reading this, we're reading how this right here, this phrase, is embedded in Isaiah 8, and the context spans 7 and 8. The readers of this book, the Jewish Christians, when they are reading this, following by the next verse, they're thinking of Ahaz, they're thinking of the Cyro Ephremite War, they're thinking about the whole theme of Isaiah 7 and 8 is trust. Okay, and that's exactly the reason why he even puts he singles this verse out, and again, Because remember, this is connected directly to the next quotation. This is verse 17, and then he's going to quote 18. So he could have just said again and did both, but he wanted to separate them because he wanted this to be highlighted. And the only way to highlight this is to understand the background, which we'll get into. O'Brien says this: if Isaiah maintained his trust in God and awaited his vindication from him, then so did Jesus, the Son of God. He endured sufferings and trials during the days of his earthly life. He called out to God with loud cries and tears and was heard for his godly fear. So that goes back to Psalm 22. He was heard. Okay. Since his trust and confidence in God were fully vindicated, then the recipients of Hebrews can be assured by the one who identifies with them that their trust in God during their trials will not be misplaced. To respond in faith as he did is fitting for every child of God. So I thought this was a very excellent point here. I'm going to give him 3 stars for this. O'Brien got down to the basis of what's going on here in this isolated quoted verse here that is separated from the next one. So this was very good. And remember, the next verse says, and again he says, I am the children whom God has given me. So that's going to be the next verse, verse 18, okay? And this is verse 17. But in order to understand all of this, it's unfortunate I have to take you through some things here. So you're going to have to understand the background to these verses. And hopefully it's not going to, I'll suffer, you have to suffer through some of this. So we're going to look here at Isaiah 7 and to get some of this. This is going to be a little, there's a lot involved here, and I don't care. You're going to have to suffer through it. And it came about in the days of Ahaz, son of Jotham, son of Uzziah, king of Judah, Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up against Jerusalem to fight against it, all right, for battle against it. And they they were not able to fight against it. And it was declared to the house of David, saying, Aram is in league with Ephraim, and his heart was, I guess, was shaken in the heart of his people as the trees of the forest are shaken from before the wind. And Yahweh said to Isaiah, go out now to meet Ahaz, you and Sha'ar-Yashuv, your son, to the end of the conduit of the upper pool, to the highway of the fuller's field, and you will say to him, okay, and this is what his message, and this is important, beware and be quiet. Do not be afraid, and let not your heart be soft from before these 2 smoking firebrands against the burning anger of Rezin and Aram, the son of Remaliah, because Aram has counseled evil against you, and Ephraim, the son of Remaliah, saying, let us go up against Judah, and let us make them sick, a sickening dread, and let us burst it open for us, and let us cause a king to be rule in its midst, even the son of Taviel. Thus says Yahweh, the Lord Yahweh, it will not stand, and it will not be. For the head of Aram is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years, Ephraim will be destroyed from being a people. The head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is the son of Remaliah. If you do not believe, then you will not be established. And then we'll see this in 2 Kings, a collateral reading here. Then Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up to Jerusalem to fight, and they besieged against Ahaz, and they were not able to fight against him. And in that time, Rezin, king of Aram, returned Elot to Aram and slipped off Judah from Elot. And the Edomites came to Elot, and they dwelt there until this day. And Ahaz sent messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, "Your servant and your son I am. I am your servant and your son. Save me from the hand of the king of Aram and from the hand of the king of Israel, who rise up against me." And Ahaz took the silver and the gold, which was found in the house of Yahweh and the treasury of the house of the king, and sent to the king of Assyria Shochat, a present. It's really tribute. Okay, and the king of Assyria listened to him, and the king of Assyria went up against Damascus and seized it, and exiled it to Kir, and Rezin he killed. And King Ahaz went to meet Tiglath-Pileser, the king of Assyria, in Damascus, and he saw the altar which was in Damascus, and King Ahaz sent to Uriah the priest, or the great priest, the likeness of the altar, and its pattern. I guess that would be a good thing. Its pattern, and to all its work. And Uriah built, the priest, the altar according to all which the king Ahaz sent from Damascus, and thus Uriah did, the priest, until King Ahaz came from Damascus. So what I wanted to do here is that you needed to see that this is the background here to Isaiah chapter 8 and 7 is the what we call the Cyro Ephremite War. Okay, so this of the Cyro Ephremite War, and it's roughly somewhere around 735 where this begins, and so we have here that Ahaz, immediately upon his ascension to the throne from Jotham his father, they were also trying to make this an alliance here with his father, but he didn't want to go along with it. And so what was going on here, the background to all this, is that there's some guy named Tiglath-Pileser, and in 745 he came to the throne of Assyria, and he began to bring the Assyrian Empire to an empire. So it's the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And that basically starts with his accession in 745, and so the people of the Levant, or the eastern seaboard of the Mediterranean. That's everyone from Syria and the Phoenicians and the Israelites and the Philistines, the Edomites, Moabites, Ammonites. All this population, they wanted to create a unified resistance to Syria, okay? And so they were trying to get Jotham and Ahaz to go along with this alliance. And Ahaz, who is not a good, he's a very evil, he's one of the most evil kings of the Judean line in the south. He did not want to align himself with this coalition, this Cyro Ephremite coalition. And and Isaiah came. So this is why we use this. We're quoting this material here, so that you can get the idea that that Isaiah was trying to tell him very specifically here. He told him right here, and this is what God said: you will say to him, Hishamir, be aware. Vahashkate, and be silent, be still, and do not be afraid, and do not let your heart be soft from before these two smoking firebrands. And then he identifies them as the burning anger of Rezin, Aram, and the son of Ramal, Yahu. And he says that they're going to come to naught within 65 years. So don't be afraid of this people, and don't go do not join this Cyro Ephremite war. And he said, beware and be still, be silent. Okay, so he said, not to be afraid of them, and definitely telling them don't join the Assyrian coalition. I mean, don't join it with Assyria. But what was going on was that Ahaz did listen, that he didn't join the Cyro Ephremite coalition, but he was going to lean on Tiglath-Pileser. And that's why I quoted this here in 2 Kings, where he said, I am your servant and your son. He should have been saying this to Yahweh. Yahweh, I am your servant and your son, and I'm going to fear you. All right, but what he did is he had to take out all the money in his country and give it as a way to get Tiglath-Pileser III to come and get Pekah the son of Remaliah, okay, and Rezin off his back, and he did. So we saw down here that Tiglath came, and he took Damascus, he exiled him, and he killed Rezin here. So so I wanted to quote these two. You have to see the context here. And it said here too that he took and God told him to take with him Sha'ar Yashuv, right? A remnant shall return. That's his son. So remember, his sons are for what? Signs and wonders in Israel. Okay, so we have Sha'ar Yashuv, and in this chapter 2, we can't get into it, but we have Emmanuel. Okay, so we have this child, and then we're gonna see here that we're gonna have Maher Shalal, right? Maher Shalal Hashbaz, right? Okay. All right. So this is his other son that he's going to meet Ahaz a second time, swift to the booty and hasten to the plunder. That's the name of this son, and this son's called Sha'ar Yashuv, and the other son is Emmanuel, God with us. So we're going. This is all symbolic. It's all a part of the text. It's all a part of this of understanding our unity in Christ here. and then what unifies us. See, verse 17 tells us how we become the sanctified. It's because our trust is in God. We're not trusting in the Democrats. We're not trusting in the Republicans. We're not trusting in this nation, that nation. The only person that you and I can trust is Jesus. That's it. He's our archegos. He is our way to salvation. He is our captain. Okay, he's our champion. He's our founder, our forerunner, our pioneer. Okay, that is that. The verse 17. It's sandwiched in between, Psalm 22 and then Isaiah 8:18. I'm going to torture you. So we have here, because we got to come here, because it says, and this is chapter 8, and Yahweh said to me, take to you a large tablet and write upon it with the stylus of a man, Limaher Shalal Hashbaz, okay, belonging to Maher Shalal Hashbaz. So this is, he just was told to do this, so to get some placard and write this on it. And so he says, and I got me faithful witnesses, Uriah the priest. So you can remember this priest here from the last slide, that this was the bad guy that Ahaz had in there as the high priest, and this guy was making a copy of an altar in Damascus, and he substituted it for the altar that Moses and Solomon built here, so for the temple. So this Uriah is the high priest. So so in some sense he's a faithful witness for Isaiah, because he's the leader of the pack, but he's not a good guy. All right, and Zachariah, son of Yeverek Yahu. Okay. So he got these two witnesses, Zechariah and Uriah. Okay, and he came, it says, and it's a parenthetical statement, and he came near to the prophetess, and she conceived and bore a son, and Yahweh said to me, call his name Maher Shalal Hashbaz. Okay, now here's the basis clause. For before the lad or the boy knows to call Avi v'Imi, my father and my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the you could say the plunder of Samaria shall be taken away shall be lifted up from before the king of Assyria. So it's saying that before this child, before he's 2 years old, or when he's about 2 years old, that it's all gonna the Damascus is going to be destroyed, and so it's a time frame here. So we've seen some of these time frames. We've seen 65 years, and so here we're seeing just 2 years for the namesake of Maher Shalal Hashbaz. And it gave the reason here for it, okay, and it's to build faith in Ahaz, that God's doing something, and the people you're fearing, you shouldn't be fearing, because God's gonna deal with them. All right, so that's what's being said here so far. And it says, and Yahweh again said to me, yet saying, because this people refuses the gently going waters of Shiloah and rejoices in Rezin and the son of Remaliah, probably in their demise. Therefore, behold, Yahweh is bringing against them the waters of the great and mighty waters of the river, that's meaning Euphrates, even the king of Assyria and all his glory, and he will come up against over all of its tributary, like creeks or something, little rivers, and overflow all its banks. And he will pass over Judah and flood and pass over and reach unto the neck, and his wings will be outspread fully the width of your land, O Emmanuel. So it's referring to the land of Emmanuel. Okay, and it says, do evil, do evil, O peoples, and be dismayed. Give ear, O those at the end, at the ends of the earth. Gird up and be dismayed. Be girded and be dismayed. Make counsel, and it shall be broken. Speak a word, and it shall not stand. For Emmanuel, for God is with us. So, what I'm trying to do here is that we have these children here that are a part of this whole chapter, so which are going to be Emmanuel, She'ar Yeshuv, and Maher Shalal Hashbaz. So these three sons, these are going to be for signs and wonders in and that's going to be the part of the quote here. All right, so let's look at the real meaty context here. Right here, we'll look at this. For thus says Yahweh to me, according to a strong hand, and he admonished me from walking in the way of this people, saying, you shall not say kesher, so that's something like treason or conspiracy, to all which this people calls conspiracy, and its fear you shall not fear, and and nor shall you dread. Yahweh of hosts, him you shall sanctify. He is your fear, he is your dread, and he shall become a sanctuary, but a rock of smiting and a rock of stumbling to both houses of Israel, for a trap and snare to the inhabitant of Israel. And many shall stumble over them, and they will fall and be broken and be snared and be captured. And so this is bind up the testimony, seal the law amongst my it's Talmudim, but amongst my my students or my disciples, and I will wait for Yahweh, who is hiding his face from the house of Jacob, and I will wait for him. Okay, so this is the phrase here where he's quoting from the Septuagint. I will put my trust in him. So this phrase here can also mean I put my trust in him. For behold, I and the Yeladim, the boys. Okay, the boys are back in town. All right. For I and the boys, whom Yahweh has given to me, are for signs and wonders in Israel, from Yahweh of hosts, who dwells in Mount Zion. So I'm sorry I had to take you through this. I mean, you guys got to remember, the Hebrew Bible is just, that is the Bible of the Septuagint is, but of the Hebrews here that we're reading, their Bible. They don't have a New Testament. There isn't a New Testament written. This is their Bible. It's the Septuagint. But we're just reading here some of the Hebrew text. And it's important, you guys, it's important for you to study Hebrew and Greek. It's very important that you learn these languages if you have the time to do so, if that's part of your calling. It's just important for you to be able to understand this. So let's put this together. So this phrase, when we go back here, he quotes these three. He quotes Psalm 22. I will proclaim your name, to my brother in the midst of the congregation. I will sing a hymn to you, and I will put my trust in you. So that comes here from this chapter here. I will put my trust in you. Comes from right here. Okay. And in verse 17 at the very end. And then he quotes 18. Behold, I and the boys, literally, it's Hayeladim, okay, I and the boys, whom Yahweh has given to me, are for signs and wonders. Okay, and I think it just says whom Yahweh has given to me. It doesn't quote the whole thing, but you got to remember when the author of Hebrews quotes these scriptures, these people, there's no way they're going to just, they know that the end of the sentence are for signs and wonders in Israel from Yahweh of hosts who dwells in Mount Zion. They already know that. They'd finished the thought. They'd finish it, okay? And they know where this comes from, all right? So you got to understand this. Ahaz represents, so you got to get these names. You got to get the names of these kids, okay? Oh boy, hopefully I didn't do anything. Okay. Sha'ar Yeshua, okay? All right. A remnant shall return. So the remnant is Isaiah and his disciples and his boys. Okay, that's the remnant. The remnant shall return. They can be, the sons of Israel can be as the sand of the sea or whatever. Only a remnant is going to return. So what's going on here is that Ahaz, all right, this wicked king Ahaz, all right, Ahaz, he's a part of the people that reject God in their generation. And Isaiah and his disciples and his boys, okay, Sha'ar Yeshuv, and then Maher, Shalal, Hashbaz, right? Okay, I won't put in all the vowels here. Swift to the booty and make haste to the plunder, or whatever. You can say it in different ways, but Shalal and Baz basically mean the same thing, interchangeable. But so they're symbolic, all right? So swift to the booty and hastening to the prey. So we were told already here that this, what this meant. For before the child knows to call my father and my mother, the wealth of Damascus and the booty of Samaria shall be taken up from before the king of Assyria. So there, he's being encouraged by living signs and wonders, kids' names. Okay, that hey, look, you don't need to be afraid of these people, and most certainly don't go in league with Assyria. He just said, be quiet, be still, don't do anything. Just trust in God. This whole thing is about trust in God. Who are you going to trust? Okay, who is your rock? Who are you going to trust in? That's what this whole thing's about, and that's the theme of these two chapters. So when you understand the Cyro Ephremite War and how Ahaz was going to be removed if he didn't go along with this coalition, and he was shaking and he was afraid and all that. Isaiah said, don't even worry about it. God already gave me a word. Just sit and watch the salvation of God, but put your trust wholly in him. Don't do anything with Assyria. And he didn't do that, and he did go with Assyria. And then God said, hey, you know what? You're still going to be wiped out now, because now Assyria, it's like one of the commentators said this. It's like Assyria is a cat, and the rest of the Cyro Ephremite and the Judeans are a bunch of mice. And so this rat Ahaz says, hey, you know what? He tells this cat, hey, these two mice are messing with me. I need you to come, and here's a bunch of money. Come and kill these mice. So he gladly does that. But what happens when the two mice are left? The rat Ahaz is left, and so what's he going to do? The cat's going to go after him next. So there's no winning for you don't make friends with an enemy, because when the enemy kills his enemy, then what do you have for a friend? An enemy. So you're going to be prey to that enemy. So the focus of everything was about trusting in God, and that is the theme here. So now when you look here at I and the children whom God has given to me. All right. So he's picking up that we're a family now. And now Christ, you got to remember, the author here he's assuming Isaiah's, Christ becomes Isaiah, I and the children. It's no longer Isaiah and, She'er Yeshuv and Maher Shalal Hashbaz, and, but now it's Christ in the children. We're the children. Who are the children? The people who are trusting in God. All right, that's us. So we're the remnant. So we're this remnant people. She'ar Yeshua, a remnant shall return. And the remnant people are the people who are trusting in God and not in political alliances and not in the flesh, but we're only our trust is in God. We're not going to be an Ahaz, okay? And so that's the context of all this. It's real important. Quickly, you can see here some of this, the Cyro Ephremite War and all. You can look at it here. I went through it. But I do want to say this. These quotations. Okay. So this was one of my favorite professors that I had, James Sanders, here, and he passed on, and I hope he made it. That's all I know. A Claremont prof. And anyhow, I used his method in my dissertation. So he has this hermeneutical triangle. The triangle describes the way that a tradent means someone who appropriates tradition, scriptural tradition, and appropriates an authoritative tradition and resignifies its meaning in light of the present need of the community. The top of the triangle deals with the function of the scriptural tradition, the hermeneutics of monotheism, prophetic critique, call to repentance, and constituencies, their examples, are lenses through which the methodology operates. Sanders states that it's important to think of intra-biblical midrash as a quest and not as an interpretation or an explanation, like an exegesis or something. It is the mode in which a biblical author explained the world by received tradition properly brought to bear on the situation for which wisdom was sought. And so it's the ways in which the New Testament authors primarily appropriate the scripture and interpret it, okay? Because Christ isn't Isaiah, okay? So when he quotes all these scriptures, he's not David, but there's a way in which that wisdom is sought from these scriptures, and it's a midrashic interpretation. So what happens is that you got the author. And so here we'll look at the author of Hebrews, okay? So he has a hermeneutic, all right? So it's a methodological use of Scripture, okay? So he's drawing from the Old Testament, from Isaiah, from the Psalms, and then the present community, he's dealing with the people here in that the book of Hebrews was written to. So there's a sociological sits in labor. It's a situation in life of the community. And so he draws upon these texts, looking at the present sociological condition, and then he's going to then call upon these scriptures underneath some type of hermeneutic. So we saw the hermeneutic here is that he used the word brothers, right? He used the word children, right? All right. And we've got sons here, okay, in this passage. So we have the common hermeneutic is that we're a family now, okay? And the family is all bound together, and I will trust in him, okay? That's the sandwich. That's the middle. That's Isaiah 8:17. So that's the sandwich. The That's what binds together the family, is that we're a family because we trust in God, and we don't trust in political alliances. We don't trust in the old Jewish community that they're a part of. Okay, now they are part of Messiah's community, and that's the hermeneutic by which these scriptures are brought into communication. So it's not like you're doing exegesis. You're not. If you're going to look at the way New Testament authors use the Old Testament, most of the time they're using a midrashic interpretation. It's Christological. So it's important that you understand this hermeneutical triangle. It also involves the work here of Julia Kristeva. She's a feminist from France. She's really Bulgarian to begin with, but she did some good work here in the field of literary criticism. And Bakhtin was a great guy. Bakhtin was a Christian. He was a Russian. With Bakhtin, moreover, these two axes, which he respectively calls dialogue and ambivalence, are not clearly distinguished, but this lack of rigor is rather a discovery that Bakhtin is the first to introduce into literary theory. Every text is constructed as a mosaic of citations. Every text is an absorption and transformation of another text. In the place of the notion of intersubjectivity, that of intertextuality is situated, and poetic language can be read at least as double. So this is really cool. This is a great thing that she found in Bakhtin and has given it to us. So what she's dealing with is appropriating the literature, and then you're resignifying it. That's basically appropriation and resignification. That's what I would call it, at least. And this is what she calls intertextuality. It's the intersection of two different texts. All right, so kind of like Sanders's hermeneutical triangle. This is very involved, but for some of you, you'll know what I'm talking about. Here, this is my particular dissertation that was published by Brill. The terms appropriation and resignification are descriptive of the process through which an antecedent text, that means like quoting from the Old Testament, is transformed by its displacement, condensation, and recontextualization. So, I and the children, that's talking about Isaiah. Well, now it's been transformed by its displacement. It's put into Hebrews. It's condensation, recontextualization. Christ is speaking, not Isaiah, and the children are not Isaiah's children, but they're now the children of God that represents those who put their trust in him. Okay. These methodologies assist in giving an account of the intertextual dialogue involved in a text's unrecorded hermeneutics. One should not eschew the importance of the diachronic textual issues. That means we have to look at Isaiah. We have to look at Psalm 22. We have to look at the original texts in which they're situated. The diachronic method pays attention to the context of an antecedent's voice. That means paying attention to what Isaiah said in his own time, like the Cyro Ephremite War. Okay, while the synchronic methodological approach pays attention to the function and purpose in which the receptor text resignifies the appropriated motifs and allusions. So this is now we're saying, okay, so then how does the author of Hebrews, he resignifies the motifs and allusions of Isaiah. Okay, so this is the receptor text. This is the book of Hebrews. Okay, it's resignifying what? It's resignifying the appropriated motifs and allusions of Isaiah 8. Okay, so in this manner, the diachronic text becomes fused with the synchronic text in the process of an allusion's recontextualization. This hermeneutic is a heuristic manner, focuses on the way that each allusion is appropriated and resignified by the author for the needs of his community, in order to understand the function of canonical hermeneutics at the intersection of textual surfaces. That's where Isaiah meets Hebrews. Okay, this is this whole Sanders's hermeneutical triangle. So this is very important. You need to learn it, okay? Get over. Excuse me. Now, we looked at Kristeva as she emphasized how the text is resignified. It's appropriated and resignified, okay? Now, Bakhtin, okay? Now, he's going to talk about the opposite and the other side of the coin. The speech act, by its nature, is social. The word is not a tangible object, but an always shifting, always changing means of social communication. It never rests in one consciousness, one voice. Its dynamism consists in movement from speaker to speaker, from one context to another, from one social community to another, from one generation to another. Through it all, the word does not forget its path of transfer and cannot completely free itself from the power of those concrete contexts into which it had entered. By no means does each member of the community apprehend the word as a neutral element of the language system, free from intentions and untenanted by the voices of its previous users. Instead, he receives the word from another voice, a word full of that other voice. The word enters his context from another context and is permeated with the intentions of other speakers. His own intentions finds the word already occupied. Thus, the orientation of the word among words, the various perceptions of other speech acts, and the various means of reacting to them are perhaps the most crucial problems in the sociology of language usage. Each social group in each historical period has its own individual perception of the word, its own range of verbal possibilities. By no means can the ultimate conceptual authority of the artist always be expressed in direct, unrefracted, non-conventionalized auctorial speech. In every social situation, a given social group has at its disposal an authoritative and durable medium of refraction. It's awesome. Then conventionalized discourse in one or another of its varieties will hold sway. Cultured speech is speech refracted through the authoritative canonical medium. Okay, so you got this. Bakhtin is a Christian. He was exiled to the Gulag, to Siberia for like 10 years or something. Okay, so he's a literary critic. So this whole thing here, language comes to us full of other voices, okay, full of the intentions of previous users of the text. So like when the author here quotes Isaiah, these words come loaded with the meaning in the context of the other, from where he came from. Even though he's appropriate and resignify it, it can't just be resignified. It can't lose its previous voice. Okay, so you got Kristeva and myself and Sanders that were resignifying things, but you can't appropriate something without understanding where it came from. So those words are already have meaning, original meaning. They can't lose their original context. Okay, and so this is his authoritative medium of refraction. It's the canon of the Bible, every culture. So he had to double speak. He couldn't just say the scripture. He used these words, authoritative, durable medium of refraction. That's the Bible. Okay, you got to understand who Bakhtin is. He had to double speak, so he didn't have to be thrown in prison in the Gulag again, right? My gosh, if you're to now to take Bakhtin, some of my insights, Kristeva's and Sanders, and take these methodologies of intertextuality, comparative midrash, Bakhtinian dialogism, and this is the how you to understand how the New Testament appropriates the Old Testament. And so words cannot completely free themselves from the power of the concrete contexts from their old ones into the new one. So very, very important for hermeneutics. That's why this board is biblical, theology, exegesis, and hermeneutics. So this is all about hermeneutics. And this is very important. This is very important stuff if you want to be able to interpret the New Testament properly. Now, I don't even know what we're going to do now. I mean, I'm just about as wasted as you are here. Heck, we'll deal with this in our next one. It's just too much. Thank you for hanging in for this whole big long session, but it was worth it, and hopefully you enjoyed it. Good night.